Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. So I'm pleased to be joined by Paul from Veeam, who is the Solutions Architect Manager there, and he's going to be discussing how Veeam's new native cloud object storage is helping organisations deal with today's data growth challenges and long-term data retention needs. But just before I pass over to Paul, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping details with you all just really quickly. So you are muted today throughout the webinar, but we will hold a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions, there is a questions box just on the side panel. So just pop them in there and I'll read those out for Paul at the end. And I'm also recording the webinar today, so I will send you all an email probably tomorrow with a link to the recording. And there's also a couple of questions at the end. So if you could, any feedback you have, or if you like any further information, just pop that in there and we will be in touch. Okay, so I'm now going to pass you over to Paul to go through the webinar with you all.
Excellent, thank you, Amy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Hopefully I'll keep you entertained for an hour, not falling asleep, and you'll get something out of what we're going to present this morning. So today, my name's Paul Saylor. I'm the Solutions Architect Manager for EMEA. I work for Veeam, and what I'd like to talk about is a couple of things on options for clouds that Veeam customers tend to find very useful, including one of our latest ones, which is a cloud tier. So there's only two real functions I wish to go on, and my clicker has suddenly lost focus. There we go. So we're going to talk about the cloud tier in Veeam, make the most of long-term options for storage, preserving efficiency, and really, really important, making financial responsibility not too as much of an issue as what it could be currently. The second part is going to be on protecting Office 365. So why do people move to Office 365? What are the implications of Office 365? Why do we need to protect it? And how can we protect it? So first of all, a little bit about Veeam. Hopefully, I'd like to think that we've got a lot of Veeam customers out there that are sat listening to this. Veeam is based in Bar in Switzerland. That's where our HQ is. We have over 330,000 customers worldwide, and on average, we take on an extra 4,000 customers a month. We protect over 17 million virtual machines. It's quite impressive when we look at these numbers, because Veeam's been going for roughly coming up to 13 years now, and in that time we've managed to accrue a good worldwide set of customers, including 82% of the Fortune 500, which are Veeam customers. The most important number on here is actually this plus 73 that we see in the bottom left hand corner, which is what we call our Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score is an independent body that monitors customer satisfaction when dealing with an organization, and our score is plus 73, which is one of the highest. I wouldn't like to say who's higher than us, but I know there isn't many. And if you look at the figures underneath, these are actual figures from our customers that are not related to what we collect. Somebody else collects these. So we find 9 out of 10 customers do actually stay with us and continue through the cycle of growth that Veeam puts out there with new features and new versions, which is fantastic for us because we get that feedback as well as customer retention. So Veeam is built upon one core product, which 13 years ago, let's say, was just backup and replication. That's the central point in there. That everything bases out of there, all our protection, all our backup, all our replication, all the interactions which lead up into orchestration and the orchestration products that we have, monitoring and analytics to make sure everything's working okay, universal APIs, which allow us to interact with other functions in the world. Let's not just say society, but because a lot of this is actually quite social, but just in the world in general. So we have cloud APIs that allow us to talk to Azure, AWS, IBM Cloud. Service providers interact with us using the APIs. Software as a service in Office 365, which we'll be discussing later on. And up until a couple of years ago, Veeam didn't really interact with the physical world, but now we have full interaction with that, with Windows, Linux, AIX, Solaris, and that those are growing and growing as we move forward in time. And in the virtual world, we are renowned for VMware and Hyper-V. Recently, Nutanix came on board. So we have length to length everything that our customers have asked for over those years. We try to implement and bring forward to make sure that it actually gets to the point where it needs to be. So why are we different? The main thing that differentiates us is we're simple to use. We're reliable as well. Many of our customers like using us. We do a proof of concept for a lot of our customers, and that just shows that we can repeat over and over again that ability to protect their data workloads. And we're also flexible. Where we started from as a simple product, and where we are now with a mass portfolio, means we have to be dynamic and flexible for our customers. We have to be able to meet those demands to keep up with where the market's going. So our latest flexibility was update 4. So 9.5 has been out now for a year and coming up to a year and a half, no, nearly 2 years. And what Veeam has a tendency to do is not release mass product updates over and over again. You know, there are various softwares out there that every week want to do a patch, want to do a fix, want to do a feature upgrade. And that's fantastic if it's not impacting anything else in the infrastructure. Whereas in a protection environment like what Veeam offers, if we start taking down those services, it means that you're not protecting your environment. So we tend to do once or twice a year, we'll put out an update, which is normally a feature update. And those features are beneficial to our customers because the things that are changing in the environment. If there's a bug fix, if there's something that somebody finds that's essential, we tend to give that out to every customer that needs it as and when, so we don't flood the market with lots of miniature patches. And then if there's a mass roll-up of those, we'll put them together and we'll distribute it accordingly. But that is generally something that's quite subliminal. You don't really see it, you just know it's happened. So what was new in update 4? So we have a massive list of items that we brought out, integrations. The main ones are Server 2019 support, 6.7 for VMware, update 1. But crucially, we had SAP HANA integration, Oracle RMAN integration, intelligent diagnostics in our analytics, self-service capabilities, security, all the things which our customers tell us day in, day out we need to do. The one in green is the one I'm going to talk about, which is object storage support and the cloud tier, and why it impacts us and why people have found this to be really refreshing when it comes to protection. And obviously there's many, many more things in there. So let us look at the cloud tier. So what's the cloud tier? In today's market, we're told day in, day out, we have to reduce costs. And generally the people that are telling us we have to reduce those costs don't really see the bottom level because it's not where they live. They see the top level, and what they see is we back files up. We protect data, we look after data. They don't see the establishment where it gets stored. So the first thing for them is, well, let's reduce some costings. We can reduce storage. Let's forget the fact that data is growing and it can go anything from being linear to exponential depending upon what your business is or what your requirements are. So our customers came to us and they started to say we need to look at lower cost options, something that's simple to use, flexible, and it's commodity driven. So if when we looked out there, we found we've got Azure Blob, we've got Amazon S3, IBM Cloud, just object storage, S3 compatible services, because not everybody wants to use the cloud, but they want to use cloud type technologies. So Amazon or S3 is actually a service that you can buy appliances or software and keep them on premises. But at the same time, they don't want to be locked in by vendor support. Many years ago, we'd buy from one vendor, we'd stay with one vendor, and that would be it. And then people started to realize that once you're locked in to a vendor, they can start to charge you what they want. And so that initial deal where it all looked so nice and rosy suddenly kind of turned into a weed. So we needed to avoid that. And the other one is that a lot of other vendors out there that offer some level of cloud storage are charging customers for the pleasure of using that on top of what they've got. Veeam is a software provider. We make, we create, we design software that is very good at what it does. What we have no intention of doing is trying to get money for nothing from our customers because we just supply that software. So on the left, you can kind of see, in fact, we'll screw it on a little bit. So what does object storage give us? And what's the main reason why we looked at it? So the main reason we looked at it is cloud storage, object storage, is generally unlimited in size and will scale to meet the needs of you. If you have a large need today and that shrinks, you can shrink that and the prices will shrink accordingly. If you have a need today that grows tomorrow, you can also increase that, and it's dynamic and flexible, so there's no impact to your business while you're doing it. So it's the ideal location to look at placing data. However, in Veeam's world, we like the control of that data. We like to look after it to make sure that we keep things simple. To you as a front-end user, it's a fantastically simple product set. You click, it works. For us at the back end, we take care of all the hardships, all the features, all the technology, just to make sure that when you click the button, it works. So we look at what people use: direct attached storage, network attached storage, appliances, and we place them behind what we call a scale-out backup repository. And that gives us that simplicity, because from an end user, you've got one door to walk through, everything else is behind it. So we see here that what that kind of scale-out backup repository. Behind it, we have our direct attached storage, NAS, dedupe appliances, and then we also can incorporate these Azure Blob, the S3, the compatibles. And because of that, we can automate the management of where that data lives, based off a few little presets and policies that we want to put in place. And we can make it so that we can use our expensive on-premises storage that we've already paid for, that we're going to sweat the resources of, to the maximum, and everything else we can use the cheaper, I say cheaper is not really a word, but the less expensive storage that's based in the cloud or on premises in some other form of storage mechanism that's S3 or object storage capable, and we can move it around and we can make it efficient. So the cloud tier, we leverage object storage to maximize the efficiency what we want. The key on this slide is that we don't charge for anything. Once you've purchased the software from Veeam, the only charge you will pay is the payment charge for that storage in the cloud and ingress and egress charges for moving data around. This is very important as well, because people talk about cloud and cloud charges, and this is how much per gig or per terabyte this storage will cost. But what they forget to mention is when you move data in and out of the cloud, there's a charge incurred with that. Some of it's part of the package, and you've got different costings, but you need to ensure that you're maximizing that cloud storage while minimizing the amount of network traffic that's out there. So how do we do that? So this object that you're looking at now shows basically is a blob storage bucket and our tier. It's a nice logical representation of data. Veeam creates a backup and we call it a VBK file. And this is what we get stored. What we do is we process the VBK file and we split it into two. We split it into metadata and we split it into data. And we actually move the data and the metadata into the storage bucket. Now, when I say we move, Veeam also will discuss with you a rule that we have, a golden rule. We call it the 3-2-1 rule. The 3-2-1 rule says you should always have 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types, one of which should be off-site. This doesn't fall into the 3-2-1 because it's an actual move. We've moved the data all the way into the cloud and we've retained a copy of the metadata locally. So we end up with this. Now, in the blob storage bucket, we have everything that we need to recover regardless of what access is that we give permission to. Locally, we call them shells. We dehydrated the full backup and we just turned them into these little metadata shells that we can access. The beauty of the metadata shell is, I talked about egress ingress charges. The metadata contains a list of every file that's been moved into the cloud and its location in the cloud. So if I need to restore something, Veeam looks at my list. There is no difference to the list that you see for something you backed up an hour ago. And it will go through that. You find what you want and it will, from there, it can say this lives in the cloud or this lives on premises. So once we've actually started to move and use the cloud tier, the characteristics that we see inside of Veeam are basically everything remains in the control of Veeam. The location of the data is separate, but it still remains on a performance tier in the extent of sober. So your data is still your data and it's full control. It's now left in a form called a shell, which is very important because the shell tells us where everything is very, very quickly and very efficiently. There's another function of the shell, which is, we call it the cache. And we'll cover that in the next section in a second when we start to roll down here. So because we control it, because we understand it, and because we've been working for so long on these feature sets, people started to say it just works. It doesn't work. It works because we designed it to work, because we wanted it to work. So we still have the ability to do instant recovery. We still have the ability to recover entire computers and disk level restores. We can still get individual files and item level restores, even though some of that data may live in the cloud. The way we do that is we use something called intelligent block recovery. This is now where the local cache as a shell comes into play. I mentioned before, those little metadata that are local hold a copy of every single piece of data that's been moved and where it's been moved to. It's called an index or an indices. And when you come to do a recovery, we look at that and we say, where is my data? And it says, okay, data is up here, data is down there. Okay, so I now want to do a restore. Right, I'll take the data that's in the cloud and any data that's local that I don't have to go to the cloud for, and I'll recover it. Let me show you again in a second. However, the intelligent block recovery uses the closest piece of data that can be used as a restore point. So as we move along with the cloud tier, you'll see that although it moves data into the cloud, we still have local copies of the data that was backed up yesterday or the day before. So I can use that yesterday data as part of the recovery mechanism for the age data that I want to pull back from the cloud. So it means it's efficient. The next diagram makes this a little bit more understandable. So full backup number 2 here is actually living on premises, because I took that yesterday as a full backup. However, down full backup number 1 is what's been moved to the cloud and dehydrated. And now I'm saying I need to recover A, B, and C. So the metadata, the shells will say, okay, I know that locally I have A and B in my full backup from yesterday. However, I don't have C. But I know that the C actually resides in the cloud on my capacity tier, my cloud tier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to map the individual block I need to get C from the cloud, so a very small piece of information, and I'm going to take A and B from local. So I'm actually cutting down the amount of network traffic that I need to incur to ask for the data, process it in the cloud, and then bring it back. So I'm cutting down costs. So this is not only cutting down costs, but of those 3 items, I'm 2/3 faster than I would be if I had to go to the cloud, because everything is local, and local is always fast. So it's really, really efficient. So the supported extents in the cloud that we currently support, funnily enough, is Azure Blob, Direct to Blob, S3 and infrequent access, IBM Cloud. The beauty of these is, everybody knows the clouds existed for a good while now. And up until recently, people have been more concerned about having virtual machines in the cloud. And if you have a virtual machine in the cloud, you can use that as an endpoint because it's a virtual machine. We can do it in the same way that we've got local machines. And it works very, very well. However, when we start looking at these supported extents, we're only using the storage. So a blob is a form of storage, a bucket is a form of storage. So we're attaching, without the additional cost of the virtual VM or the virtual machine that sits inside of that structure, be it Azure, AWS, or IBM Cloud. So it's much cheaper, and it's more or less like plugging a hard drive in. But also we've got compatible object storage for on-premises customers, people who want to use appliances or other S3 options. So these are things like Mini or Cloudy and SwiftStack. The beauty is that we have no limit on what we support. Veeam are very open on this. They've just got one single line that says we support the standard that is S3 compatible object storage, and if you comply with that standard, we'll work on you. As an example, one of the names on the list, I won't say which one it is, but one of the names on the list when we first introduced this wasn't up to date with its code. And so it would kind of 90% work when we were doing beta trials, but we never changed anything. But that product then updated itself to the latest version of object storage and S3, and automatically it just started to work because the code was right. So we've actually removed our need to do support structures, because we just say, if you're at the same standard as S3 compatible hardware compatibility list, let's just call it, then you're just going to work. So there's no need to bother. So when does data get moved? People have this understanding of a cloud tier that says, that's great, because what I can do is I can take a backup and I can just move it straight into the cloud. It would be great, but it would be very, very impractical and very expensive. Ingress and egress charges, this goes back to. If every day I was to start moving data into the cloud on a mass scale, I'm going to incur a lot of costs. So I need to reduce those down. So what we do is we integrate, we imply an operational window. That operational window is every 4 hours. And every 4 hours, we go into our scale out backup repository, we interrogate the data, and we say, is anything capable of being moved or tiered up into the cloud tier? And what we're looking for is what we call a sealed backup chain. So a sealed backup chain is a piece of data that's no longer going to be modified. So let's take a standard backup. In fact, let's look at sealed backups. If we look at a standard job that most people run is a forward backup, and that includes this. In here will show a 7-day forward incremental backup. And on Monday we take a full, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday we take incrementals, Monday we create another full, etc., etc. So on Friday, for example, and I create the Saturday and the Sunday, I still need, if I was to recover, all the other components to do a recovery because there's data in there. Whereas if I've created the Monday, that means I've finished with the week before, so it's now sealed. It's no longer going to be modified. It's a read-only action that's required on it, because that's the nature of how it is. So in the cloud tier, this is a candidate for being moved, but Monday won't be moved because Monday is still under modification rules. If I do reverse backups, so a reverse backup basically says that every day I'm going to create a full, and I'm going to put my incremental backups for yesterday. So the things that have changed since yesterday are all rolled up, and yesterday's is left. So we can see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. However, I'll only use the last 2 days to ever make changes to my full backup. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those 5 days are actually sealed because they're never going to be modified. And then forward and rollbacks. Forward and rollbacks basically mean it's a mix of the two. So I'm going to use incrementals to go forward. However, I'm going to keep a reverse incremental just in case I need to roll back any. So by rights, those reverse backups are never ever going to be modified, so they're also candidates to be moved into the cloud. So those are standard jobs, and we can see, I know it's got a box around it, but it kind of puts that logic around your head. They're sealed. So these are good candidates. If I move any of these into the cloud, they will never have to be reprocessed using CPU, network, or memory by anything that sits in that cloud. So it's not going to incur charges, and the only thing that we're going to do internally is we're going to read them out to do restores. So the other part of what we do is the GFS. So GFS is grandfather, father, son, sealed backup copy jobs. So our policy generally says I want 1 to several years, 4 quarterlies if you use quarterlies, 12 monthlies, 4 weeklies. So every one of those is sealed. It's a full backup that we make for resilience, regulations, compliance, whatever reason we do it. However, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday are forever forward incrementals. So they're still being modified. So a sealed backup copy job is anything within there that are candidates to be moved. So because we can very simply create this, we know exactly what data needs to be moved up and when it's going to be moved up. So inside of Veeam, it's very easy. We look down, we see object storage as an option. We choose the one that we want, and the wizard will guide us through everything that we need to do and look after everything else. It's simple. All we have to do, as it shows on here, is choose the extent that's got the capacity tiering, choose how long that sealed chain will remain local before I move it. We've also got a little override button. One of the other reasons, going right back to the beginning, was storage utilization. The override button, if I clicked it, would say a percentage. That percentage is how much disk occupancy am I allowed to have before I panic, basically. So normally it's around 80%. So if the disk capacity, local storage, reaches 80%, perform tiering straight away. And that means instead of waiting for 7 days for that to pass, it will automatically run that tier off. And we can encrypt the data, as you can see at the bottom. So in a nutshell, the cloud tier. The cloud tier gives us the ability to use unlimited capacity in the cloud, use the scale-out backup repositories, so we can totally control exactly how that data moves on and off premises based off our policies, not off anybody else's policies. And it works by looking at those sealed backups and moving the data but leaving the shells behind, so that we've got fast, efficient access and we can reduce the costs in getting the data back and moving the data up. So that's the end of cloud tier. Hopefully it's not fried your head too much. There's a lot of information in a short amount of time though, so I appreciate your patience there. So we're going to move on to backup for Office 365, which is a little bit lighter. Hopefully it's a little bit lighter anyway. So why Office 365? So the whole point of this is, why are people moving to Office 365 and why do we need to protect it? So let me tell you a story. So I come from Manchester, or outside of Manchester to be more exact, about 20 miles outside of Manchester. And when I was a child, I used to get on a bus on a Saturday and I would do 2.5 hours to travel into the city centre of Manchester and go some shopping. And I'd be on my own, and that was my trip, that was my adventure, and it was phenomenal because I'd be waiting for it all week. I'd buy things I never bought. However, about 3 weeks ago, I got on a plane, I flew to Orlando. It was work, it wasn't a holiday. I spent a few days in Orlando. I flew back. My point being that the world is a small place now. And because it's a small place, the geography of who we deal with suddenly shrunk down to, today I'm talking to people in America, tomorrow I'm talking to people in Dubai, South Africa, and we all have interactions globally. Because of this, we need something where we can all work together as a team. We can share information. We can scale to meet the demands of the business. Today, the business is in the UK, but we're going to buy an arm in Holland, and we're going to move here. So there has to be something dynamic that maps to the way the business is now growing. We have to keep up with technologies. Security is an issue, data protection. But you know what? We don't want to impose this on the IT staff because they're already overloaded. So there's many reasons just within those sentences that people are moving to Office 365, because it removes that responsibility from them. When they want to scale, they say, I need 50 more users. If they want to shrink, they say, I want to lose 50 more users. It's all flexibility. So on the note of privacy and compliance and security, we had some consultations with some of our customers. And basically what we found was that these customers had needs, and the needs were based around privacy, compliance, fear of loss and control, complexity and skills, and personal security. And that personal security was one of the most important factors, because they were saying, right, so how do I protect what I've got? Fear of loss and control of infrastructure was another major impact, because they were saying, if I go to Office 365, I'm going to lose the ability to work in Office and control things myself. So by moving to Office 365, they actually, and looking at what it offers, they found that they never had that issue. The fear of loss and control was just that. It was a fear. It wasn't the Microsoft take care of the privacy and the compliance issues around the location of the data, but they don't actually take control of anything else. So why do I need to do a backup of 365? Very simple. The customer perception is that Microsoft are going to take care of everything, and that's not true. Microsoft can't take care of everything, but they never say they can take care of everything. Actually, if we look a little bit deeper, what we see is that Microsoft take care of infrastructure. and that's all they take care of. It's just pure infrastructure. The customer takes care of the data, and it's yours. It always is. Microsoft say this, and they point you to it and say, this is where it is. If we look on the website, we can see here, with Office 365, it's your data. You own it. You control it. So, excuse me 1 second.
Hello, sorry. Do you want to take a Yeah, can you put kind of
Hello, apologies for that. So let's have a look at the shared responsibility model from Microsoft. The Microsoft responsibility model is very, very simple. It splits it into two. The first part is primary responsibility, global infrastructure. They're responsible for ensuring that you've got uptime and availability to access Office 365 over cloud services. Your responsibility is, it's your data. You create it, you control it, you have it where you need to have it. So what about support? Office will, or Microsoft will replicate that DC to DC within the geographic regions, and they'll make sure that it's always up for you, regardless if it needs to fail over, etc. They protect that level of operating infrastructure. However, the copy of your data can be stored in a different location, and that's your responsibility again, because it's your data. The recycle bin, as far as Microsoft's concerned, is a short-term item. You put it in, it means that you want to delete it. Therefore, once you've deleted it, why would I want to give it you back? Data retention from your respect, from short-term or long-term, is part of policies. It's part of compliance or regulation. So again, this sits with you. Security, infrastructure level, physically accessing that, Microsoft will take care of. Everything else is down to you. We'll cover a little bit more of them in the next slide. And then regulations. Their regulations is to provide access and do the standard controls, again, for access. The data compliance, is it suitable? Should we keep it? How long do we have to keep it? All of that sits in your responsibility. So there is a requirement for you to do something within Office 365. So where do these things normally come from? Where do the issues normally come from? The first one's accidental deletions. We all do it. We all hit delete and inadvertently it just goes away and we forget about it and we go, oh God, I've lost it. The other one for accidental deletion, funnily enough, is actually your spam folder. For some reason, the rules and the policies change on spam, and one day you receive an email from a group that you're part of or whatever, the next day it's gone into spam. But not many people actually look at spam and check it out. But it will recycle itself. So accidental deletions are very easy to do. Retention policies, confusions, and gaps. With GDPR last year, it had an impact that people didn't kind of understand that would affect them. And that impact was they went from saying we're going to keep our data for 7 years to, oh, if we do that, actually that's not very good. So what I'll do is I'll cut down my retention to 6 months. This means that emails could have their retention policy again cut down to a certain amount of time. So a user who wants to go back to a certain point 8 months ago no longer has that ability because the policy doesn't allow them to do it. Malicious insiders, people who leave, don't just get up and say, I'm leaving. They know months in advance that they're going to leave. So they've got the ability to corrupt, move, delete data. Most people are not malicious in any way, so say, form, but some people are. And then external threats. External threats are a lot less these days because we're becoming more aware of security, etc. But it's still something that is a risk. And outages, as much as we try, we can mitigate the risk of outages. However, there's always going to be that risk of an outage that we're not in control of. So we did a survey. Veeam did a survey. Veeam did a survey of customers or people, and we said, so what are you doing to protect yourself in Microsoft Office 365? 76% don't have a backup because they don't realize that they needed to have one, because they follow what's out there and what's most commonly seen, which is Microsoft will ensure that it's up and running, and don't read the small print. Yeah, 11% are backing up on premises, 6% are elsewhere, and 6% are doing other. I don't exactly know what other is, but I'm more worried about the fact that other is out there. So it's a bit strange, but 76% of organizations are at risk of data loss because they're 100% reliant on Microsoft to protect that data. So what do they actually protect? So in your inbox or inbox folder data is stored there for 2 years and moved to archive. That's nice and safe. Deleted items, 1 month. Anything in the deleted items or recycle bin, after that it's gone. There's no getting it back, there's nothing done. Anything with auto archive is a month and then move to archive, so that's okay. Deleted stuff, stage 1 recycle, stage 2, so 14 and 30 days and then permanently deleted. Same for OneDrive. But if an employee leaves the company, 1 month and everything's deleted, which is strange when you think that with GDPR again or regulation compliance, that customer who's that employee, sorry, that's left the company has been doing business for X amount of time. There's emails that you need that you're going to have to keep and move somewhere. So how do you protect that one? So it's quite strange. Microsoft offer a very good service. However, it doesn't meet the demands of modern business. So what do we offer in our product? Funnily enough, we do have a product called Veeam Backup for Office 365. And what we give you the ability to do is back up every single item in there for as long as you want. Not only for as long as you want, but to wherever you want. The key here is that you control the access to data deletion, not Microsoft. If somebody turns around and says we need to change the compliance and the regulatory rules so that we keep the data for 7 years from Office, then you go, that's absolutely fine. I can do that. I can store it here. And where can we store it? We can actually store it anywhere we want. We can take it from premises up to from Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, from on-premises Exchange or on-premises SharePoint, and we can store it on our backup repository. But we can also store it in the cloud. We can put it into AWS. We can put it into S3, Azure, anywhere at all where we've got access to store data, we can put it. So your options are unlimited, purely based off what you do as an organization to function and the storage mechanisms that you use. So from a restore operation, we have a thing called an Explorer. We allow you or the people that you give permissions to go in and find an individual email. We can do e-discovery and find a set of emails that are related to a person. We can do comparisons against emails that are changed. We can take that back and send it to the original location, to a new location, to a new user. There are so many options. In fact, we have 25 unique ways of recovering using Office 365 and Veeam. So the important ones here are OneDrive for Business and OneDrive for SharePoint, because those are the unknown heroes. Office 365 and Outlook, everybody use on a day-to-day basis, like Sarah here. Sarah uses us, and as you can see, she's very smiley because she likes what she sees. So why is OneDrive so special? So with the introduction of Office 365 and OneDrive, people suddenly got access to a huge storage pool, and that was accessible from anywhere. So they could work in the office, store data in there, go home, get access to that data on their work laptops. They could be totally dynamic in where they're going to be, but always access the same data. So with Veeam Office for 365 protection, they could protect that data. So if inadvertently it went wrong for whatever reason, they've got access to it. And SharePoint's another one. SharePoint isn't just a database, it contains libraries. In some circumstances, people have made their total CRM out of SharePoint, or all their internal intranet sites are all based on SharePoint, and they need somewhere to protect that to enable them to get that back if something goes missing. So currently we're at standard VBO 2, that's our version, and some of the things it allows us to do. So we can compare and restore different mailboxes and different exchanges. We can select individual users, groups of users, public groups, or entire organizations, what we choose to back up. We support group mailboxes, which is something that's quite important, because if you've got one user and they're a member of 10 group mailboxes, that you can protect all 10 of those group mailboxes and get the data based off that one single user. You don't have to purchase licenses for groups. So we try and keep the costings down for that as well. We can protect OneNote notebooks. Now, It's funny enough because OneNote is something I personally use all the time. I think it's great. As at the same time, I use Microsoft Teams. The knock-on effect, as I said before, of SharePoint is Teams and OneNote, all the data is stored in SharePoint. So by protecting SharePoint, we have an inadvertent ability to protect OneNote and Microsoft Teams. We also integrate full PowerShell RESTful APIs. Many of our customers have actually created their own user portals that are based around their own custom logos, colors, any kind of scheme that they use internally based off using these RESTful APIs. So it's a little thing, but you know, to some people, it's that little finishing touch that means this is part of my organization. I see this working well. So in a nutshell, protection for Office 365 using Veeam. You've got to protect the data because there's many ways it can go missing. Microsoft will protect that infrastructure and make sure it's available to you, but you need to make sure that you've got the threats covered from accidental deletion, from malicious, from hacking, etc., etc. You also need the ability to quickly restore individual items, and this is where Veeam comes in again, because you can find an individual item, not just a mass of emails or a user. You can go down to that granular basis and choose how to recover that with lots of flexibility. And we can also make sure that meets legal and compliance requirements for e-discovery and backup for archives. So it's a really, really good solution. On top of that, we can place that on premises into Azure, AWS, or any service provider that gives some form of repository for storage. So how's it come? So funnily enough, we just introduced what we call the Community Edition. The Community Edition gives you 10 free Exchange users and 10 OneDrive users and 1 terabyte of SharePoint. The whole idea is that you may have a need to protect just the C-level people and just say, you know what, we'll see how this goes. I'll use these free licenses. We'll check it out and see how well it works. And then once you see how well it does work, then you can look at investing and buying the licenses to map off the rest of the business, or buying just for the people that need it. But the free version looks after the small organizations as well that don't have many users, but everybody has a need to protect Office 365. And if you do use it at home on a personal level, you can also use that Community Edition as well. Meanwhile, we have the full package, which is sold on a user basis. So nice and simplistic. So this last slide here is my last slide. I'm not going to talk anymore. I know you're going, yes, thank you very much. I like to leave this up because these are what people say who actually use Veeam Backup for Office 365 from Veeam. So have a little time, have a little read of that. And on that note, I'll pass back to Amy and hopefully we can field some questions. And thank you very much for your time.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Paul. So yeah, if you do have any questions at all there, so just on the control panel, there is a questions box. If you just type those in there, I'll read those out for Paul. Just wait a minute or so, see if any come through.
I think I probably filled everybody's brain full of nonsense.
I might have covered everything off, obviously, which is good. Yeah, I'll just wait a few more seconds, see if any come through. I'm actually just going to change the slide quickly. Hopefully you've all read what's on the page there. Just because we have our email address here, so if you do want to submit any outside of the webinar today, then just please do email us on tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. So there's one question here. It says, I've heard of litigation hold on Office 365. Does this not technically back up mailboxes by placing the mailbox on hold indefinitely?
That's a good question. So litigation hold is an extra charge from Microsoft, and in a nutshell, what they do is they provide you with 50 gigabytes of storage capacity, and so what they say is we will hold all your data indefinitely within a special region. So as you start to delete stuff, it goes into a different region and it gets stored there. However, there's still time limits on things like your recycle bin, so it doesn't hold that indefinitely. The problem with litigation hold is you have to know how much data you want to protect, because as soon as it reaches that 50 limit, the first in is suddenly the first out, because it will retain the last amount of data that you put in. So if I put a 1 meg file in and I'm at my 50 gig limit, then actually there's 1 meg that's going to drop off at the back end. So it's good for specific use cases where, for example, you know that you've got a suspect user or that it's a legal person that has to have some form of better litigation hold without impacting everywhere else, then you can do that through Office 365. But predominantly, you're paying extra money for the ability to just have a bigger storage location.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Sorry, one more just popped up. This question says, any Veeam proxies required in the cloud environment, and in brackets of VMs, question mark.
For, if you can expand on that, so a proxy for what? For the cloud tier? If it's for the cloud tier, there is no need for that. We get a direct connection into that. Yeah. So yes, we don't use proxies in the cloud for using the cloud tier.
Perfect. So I think that's all the questions that we have for today. If you do have any that you think of after the webinar, please do just submit them to our email address there, and I will put you in touch with Paul and hopefully answer those for you. And as mentioned at the beginning there is a couple of questions at the end, so if you could fill them out, that'd be great. Just any feedback or if you'd like any further information. Also, we've recorded the webinar today, so I'll send you a link tomorrow morning with the recording. And yes, so thank you for presenting, and thank you everyone for taking the time out of your days to join us today. Hope you found it valuable, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.